Yet again, a resounding win for Team India. Three in a row. First Afghanistan, then Scotland, now Namibia, all feeling the wrath of both India's batsmen and bowlers. Against Scotland and against Namibia, it was a relatively quick finish, but quite a commanding performance, particularly from the openers. In this case, Rohit Sharma picking up a 50, 56 of 37, and KL Rahul again, another quick fire half century after playing second fiddle for much of the first 10 overs, 54 of 36. Surya Kumar Yadav chipping in at number 3, 25 of 19 deliveries. Well, to look back at that, and of course, to look ahead to the knockout stage, because this was the final game of the Super 12 stage. Here we are on Cricbuzz Live. I'm Gautam Bhimani in the company of Dinesh Karthik and Simon Doull. Gentlemen, just as we expected, not quite a 10-11 over finish. Took a few more deliveries, Dooley. But again, India showing that if only they could have done a little bit more earlier, they should have been in that last four.
Yeah, doing exactly what we thought they would do, I think, up against Namibia. Class prevails. Rohit and KL at the top. Rohit sort of the aggressor at the start. KL chiming in at the back end and really getting his scoring rate up a lot towards the back end of that innings, and finished off nicely by Surya Kumar Yadav as well. You can see those scores there. KL was brilliant at the back end. It's just been the way he's gone lately. He started slightly slowly and then really accelerated. Rohit with 56 off 37, and Surya Kumar coming in late in the piece with 25. It's a demolition job, but it's a job that they needed to do and one that we expected them to do. So a good finish to the tournament. Shame about the start.
Certainly a shame about the start. Maybe a few people feeling that they wanted to see a last hurrah from Captain Kohli in his last match as T20I captain. But keeping to the tradition of giving everybody a hit, DK, they gave Sky a bit of a hit out in the middle, which is the one thing he hadn't got.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in the previous game when the opportunity arose, he gave the opportunity for Hardik and Pant to go ahead of him and, do a bit of power hitting. In this occasion, I think he saw Surya Kumar hasn't had much of a hit to give him the opportunity to go and play in a World Cup game and bat and experience what it feels like. Nice of him. And I think, Surya is a top quality batter. Enjoyed it. Overall, a very, very astounding, resounding, very perfect victory. And, the last three teams felt the wrath of the Indian team, so to say, and pretty straightforward victories in all three games.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things. Namibia obviously were trying to pick up whatever they could. They started well with the bat. They finished well with the bat. But once, despite a few good deliveries to start with, they couldn't really have any answer to Rohit and Rahul.
No, they didn't. And you expect that. Look, it's a different class of opposition that they've come up against in, 3 games in this tournament. And again, all you can ask from them is to learn. I thought Trumpelman has looked good throughout the tournament. I think he's been the pick of their bowlers along with Visa, who's been steady, and possibly Schultz. I think Schultz, in general terms, has done a pretty good job with the ball as far as some spinners concerned. Just the one over for him tonight. But that's just all you want, and all that Pierre de Bruin will be asking from these guys is to learn, is to get better. Take away things from this tournament that you can learn from, that you can practice, from the conversations you've had with opposition players, and just get better. We now know the standard. We're there next year. How do we do it better? What do we need to do to be better next year, and maybe to push to win 2 games?
I come to DK on the same aspect of it. Could the Namibian bowlers have done anything differently, or would any attack have suffered with batsmen like this on song on a decent pitch?
Well, unless Shaheen Shah Afridi decides to change his passport, I think Namibia has done really well. Look, they created that one opportunity at short fine leg. Against world-class batters, you need to hold on to whatever half chance comes your way. I still think Namibia played a really good brand of cricket. Spinners, as much as they play spinners and they find that a learning experience, the spinners bowling to Indian batters also would have learnt a lot. They would have seen how well the Indians generally tend to play spin. So Lofty Eaton, Bernard Shaw, all would have got a good opportunity. They would have enjoyed it. At the end of the day, what I feel is they would have learnt a lot in this World Cup, much more than the 2003 World Cup where they got kind of blown away. Here they found a way to, stay in the tournament, play against good sides, beat the one associate nation that they were put along in the group with, and compete against Pakistan, push them to the corner. So, there's a lot of positives. Compete against New Zealand and push them to a corner. India was obviously a very different beast today. Obviously the pressure not being there, it was a nothing game for them. So just getting blown out of the water completely. But that's fine, I guess. Namibia on most days would have been expected. A lot of teams would have expected this to happen every match in that tournament. But in a lot of the other matches, they've competed, done well for themselves. So I think they can be a very, very proud unit when they take the flight to Namibia.
Yeah, two things, Dooley. One is, of course, they didn't get bowled out at all at this stage in the tournament. And two, let's not forget they actually came through the qualifying stage as one of the teams who weren't expected to come in.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the key. So they went to the qualifiers or round one and weren't expected to be part of the tournament. It was sort of, it was favoured teams outside of them that were thought they would be here. And so they fought their way through that, winning games. Yes, a couple of key players have stood up for them, but that's what you need. And as I say, all you want from now is what have we learned? What can we do better? We've now got 1 year. I'm sure the government and their board and probably some business people and sponsors in and around Namibia are now saying, okay, this is a viable option for sponsorship. We can actually afford to support this team a little bit more now. And they've got 1 year and change to get ready for Australia next year. So let's make sure we do everything we possibly can to make them even better by the time they jump on the plane to Australia.
But from India's perspective, just the intent we've seen in the last 3 games, DK, there will be a few people turning around and saying, no doubting the class of Rohit, Rahul, Virat, Surya, all of them. If only we had a little bit more of this in the first 2 games, maybe just a little bit conservative against Pakistan and New Zealand.
Yeah, I think it's just pressure, Gautam. I think there was a huge one coming in. The tournament, the kind of scheduling, a lot, everybody expected the first one to be kind of a walk in the park for India because of the kind of talent we have and the team we put out, everything, etc., etc. But the first match, when things completely went the other way, I think a lot of muck came on top, and then 1 week of not playing a game and then obviously playing a solid bowling attack like New Zealand, losing the toss, everything went against, and that's it. And your tournament's over. And the rest of the teams have played steady cricket. And as we spoke before, unlike the group of death, there wasn't going to be many, surprises per se, and nothing in this tournament has surprised anyone at all. I think it's all gone according to plan. The best 4 teams are there in the semi-finals. The teams that haven't played cricket haven't found a way to get there. India obviously didn't play their best game in the first couple of games, even though they did some good things in the last 3 games. I think the first 2 games mattered. They knew it. Those were the 2 important games. Bad luck that it came first up, and it kind of hit them straight in the face and pretty hard at that. It's a learning curve as well. I think in the practice matches we played well as expected. Obviously, India is a very strong team, but against a world-class bowler like Shaheen Afridi and Trent Bolt, we probably, didn't bat as well. The wicket was hard. We could give many reasons to it, but at the end of the day, I think India would know that India didn't play their best cricket in their first 2 days. They would have hoped that if these 3 games had been the first 3 games, the amount of confidence that they would have taken into the last couple of games playing as New Zealand, New Zealand and Pakistan would have been very, very different. But that's the beauty of a tournament like a World Cup. You can't pick and choose those things. Control what you have, and clearly the first 2 games didn't go according to plan.
Yeah, either the schedule that DK is suggesting, or maybe even have broken up the 2 bigger games as the first and the last. Otherwise, you've had the arch rivals and the serial killers back to back, Dooley.
Yeah, look, and I mean, there's I don't know how to put this kindly, but there is a real air of arrogance around the scheduling, and the scheduling was put to the broadcaster of this tournament, and that's what they wanted, along with there was some ICC involvement and broadcast involvement, and they wanted that because I think it was the holidays and around Diwali, and they wanted those games played at peak times, and there's an air of arrogance around that to say, oh, we'll be fine, we'll win those games anyway. I believe that Pakistan should have always been the first game for India, and I think that creates a massive buzz. But New Zealand should always have been the last game in that group. And that's how, this should have been New Zealand tonight. New Zealand, India, for a place in the semi-finals should have been tonight. And that's how the scheduling should have worked. So without, I mean, I guess it is being pretty blunt and pretty, I'm not usually one to hold back, but it's an air of arrogance around the scheduling, and I don't. The Indian team didn't have anything to do with it, so I'm not saying they did, because they didn't. They didn't have a thing to do with it. It was around the broadcasting part of it as well. So that's the reason, and the fact that they didn't play well enough in those first two games, that's India's own fault as a team, but the scheduling is not their fault. If that makes sense.
Certainly makes a lot of sense. We'll look back on it. I'm sure there's more scheduling issues to be looked at a year's time come Australia, and folks will start tweaking around with what they need to do. But let's look back at the final points table. Remember, again, this is game number 42. So this is the final game of the Super 12 stage. This is India's group number 2. Pakistan qualifying, the first team of all to get that Q next to their name with 10 points. New Zealand, after their victory against Afghanistan, securing the Q and the 8 points. India with 6 commanding points, but those are still 6. That's a bit like saying you hit a big 6, you get 12. Doesn't work like that. It's still 6 points for India. Afghanistan, Namibia, and Scotland also making up the group. Group number 1 was also decided a couple of days ago. That was where England finished on top, and Australia finishing as runners-up. A competitive group. We called it the group of death, and that's because we've got 6 test-playing nations. South Africa, Sri Lanka, the West Indies, Bangladesh, all missing out on qualification. And South Africa with 8 points, sterling performance, still miss out. Sri Lanka looked really good. 4 points, they still miss out. That happens in a competitive game. What we have coming up now is the road to the final. It means there's just one step that lies between England and New Zealand, who play semi-final 1, and Pakistan and Australia, who play semi-final 2 in Dubai before they clash on the 14th of November in the grand finale, also at the Dubai International Sports Stadium. Well, the first one we have coming up is England versus New Zealand. Simon Doull, I'll come straight to you. That's going to be a big one. It's going to be in Abu Dhabi. A lot of people felt that was going to be India versus England briefly. But yes, it's going to be quite a clash. Do we even bring up Lord's 2019? Should we?
Yeah, we should, because at the end of this tournament, New Zealand could actually have held all 3 trophies. So, so we can bring up Lord's and say that by an inch of Ben Stokes' bat, New Zealand could possibly at the end of this tournament have all 3 ICC trophies. Now that would be an incredible feat. Hold the Test Mace, the 50 over, and the T20 World Cup. None of them, well, only one of them's happened, and only one of them is likely to happen. But it could have been all 3. Look, there's no call or no talk from New Zealand's point of view of any revenge or anything along those lines. England are an incredibly good side. I think they're a slightly lesser side without Jason Roy at the top of the order, but they'll move Johnny Bairstow, I think, who's just as good. It just means that little gap in the middle order filled probably by Sam Billings, or do they bring in David Willey and give themselves a little bit more of a bowling option? James Vince has been added to the squad. We've seen that that's been approved by the committee today to replace Jason Roy. But all I see from England is Johnny Bairstow going to the top and Bilbo Baggins, Sam Billings, just coming into the middle order just to sort of play those reverse and those laps and run hard between the wickets. Brilliant in the field. And that's kind of how I see them doing it, and they're still a very, very powerful, strong side. New Zealand are going to have to be at their best, I think, to compete with that England side.
Yeah, one of the pre-tournament favourites, TK, but the missing of Tymal Mills with the ball and Jason Roy now, the latest withdrawal, and we could see Owen Morgan almost emotional if you saw that press conference when he said, yeah, that's a huge loss for Jason Roy. Do you see a like-for-like replacement for an outsider coming in like Vince? Or do you see, like, as Dooley said, Bairstow just slides up the order?
For a start, I think England in the 2019 World Cup as well didn't go very well without Roy. I think Roy is like a massive insurance that they got. He brings a certain flair and flamboyance and power at the top, which they really like, and which just mixes well with Joss Butler. I have a feeling they'll just go Bairstow up top and they'll fit in Sam Billings there. They're not somebody to make any radical moves, so they'll go, steady way. And they're still a very good side, and on paper, definitely better side than New Zealand. But we all know how the names on the paper just doesn't mean nothing. So a lot will depend on the toss as well. Again, Abu Dhabi being a venue which has a bit of dew in the evening, so it looks like a very, very good contest, a mouth-watering contest. Yes, the context of 2019 World Cup is still there, and probably arguably one of the greatest finals ever played in the history of sport. So that's a match that everyone will remember. But I don't think anybody has any bitter memories about it. I think New Zealand have accepted it gracefully, and England have obviously accepted their part with a lot of happiness, but at the same time very humble and very down to earth in their approach towards how they dealt with everything around it. So I think both good teams, both have had a lovely roadmap to this tournament semi-final, and very worthy semi-finalists.
Yeah, it was one of those rare games in the last 15, 20 years, Dooley, that I've actually watched purely as a spectator, the 2019 final with a good cold beverage in hand. But I was sitting among a group of about 15 Kiwi fans, Dooley, and not one of them reacted adversely. They were like, they shouted till they were hoarse for their team. But when it went the other way, they were like, yeah, rules are rules. That's the way it is.
Well, I mentioned on commentary the other night, actually, two vastly different things in that tournament, right? Martin Guptill's throw to dismiss MS. We all remember that, all right? We all remember that brilliant throw to run MS out in the India game, which kind of which got New Zealand to that final. The same guy threw the ball that hit Ben Stokes' bat and flew off to the boundary. So sometimes you want the bloke with a gun arm throwing the ball, and sometimes you just don't. You'd rather some bloke who couldn't throw it properly and lobbing it up in the air in the final. But it's just one of those situations. It's a freak thing. You doubt that it will ever happen again. It might be one of the once in a lifetime sort of history moments that what happened at Lord's. But as DK just said, and it's still one of the greatest games of cricket I think ever played, and so many people. And I don't know whether you've seen that video when it cuts between Wimbledon and the cricket, and the Djokovic Federer match and the cricket final going on at the same time, in different parts of London. It's an amazing video, and just the tension and everything around it. So look, I'm looking forward to the semi-final. I think it'll be a cracking game. As I say, New Zealand, huge respect for England, and I think Kane Williamson and Owen Morgan have enormous respect for each other as well.
I can tell you what, I knew a friend who actually shuttled between SW19 and came back up to North London to catch a bit of the cricket, and it was a feast of cricket. The only place you could get it both ways was on television. But let's get New Zealand squad up and look at their perspective. They've been consistent, they've been clinical. Simon Doull, I'm going to throw this straight back at you. Do you reckon you need, in a big knockout game, do you need a little insurance with the bat, or are you absolutely happy with the makeup of the 11?
They won't. There's no way they'll change that side. Their insurance with the bat comes in the form of Mitchell Santner and Adam Milne and Tim Southey, and they think that one of those guys is good enough to get 10, 15, 20 runs if required. The bowling attack is the key. The bowling is what's got New Zealand to this point in the tournament. Tim Southey, Trent Boult, Mitchell Santner, all going well under 6 per over. New Zealand have been the most economical bowling attack in the whole tournament, and up against the most power-packed batting side in the tournament. So it's a mouth-watering type contest. They will not change that winning combination. It's just not something that Kane Williamson or New Zealand will do. So the top 6 just have to do the job. And if Santner's required to bat 2 or 3 overs at the end, along with Milne or Sodhi or Southey, then so be it.
Yeah, I know Dooley wasn't on the show when we were just making a brief suggestion before the Afghanistan game that the only possible replacement we saw was a Kyle Jamieson for Adam Milne, purely to support the batting. But TK, you reckon big tournament, big team, you're not going to tamper with a winning combination?
100%. New Zealand, definitely not. They won't do it. They shouldn't do it. They have a good team. Adding in a Kyle Jamieson doesn't ensure you nothing, because obviously Milne is bowling way better. You don't know what you'll get from a Kyle Jamieson with the bat. So there's no point going down that direction. I think they are settled. They made peace with the fact that they're probably a batter less at the start of the tournament, but decided this is the way we want to go. The moment they dropped the Seifert, they wanted that extra bowler. They made it very, very clear, and they won 2 games of cricket pretty comfortably. So irrespective of whether they bat first or bowl first, they expect the bowling to stand up. and the batting will try its best and try and get as close to a pass score as possible, but they expect the bowling to deliver. And that's a very straightforward statement. Till now, they have lived by that statement. They have been the best bowling side in this tournament in terms of the economy rate achieved by other teams that have batted against them. So overall, they've played perfectly to the brand of cricket that they've promised themselves at the start of picking the 11, and they've stuck to it. And that's the beauty of New Zealand, and that is one of the reasons why they'll always succeed in these tournaments, because they have a game plan and they stick to it and keep it as close to themselves as possible.
I like the use of the phrase "make peace with," Simon, because
Yeah.
once you've decided at one stage of the tournament you're going a certain way, unless something goes drastically wrong, why would you not stick to it?
And that's exactly right. It's a great way to put it, actually, make peace with it, because they've just decided that, up to Jimmy Neesham at 6, we've got to do the job. This is our batting unit. And I don't mind that. Mitchell Santner's got a test match 100. He's got first class 50s. He can play. There's no issue around that. On average, your number 7 faces, I think, 9 balls in T20 cricket, on average. Your number 8 faces between 6 and 7 balls. All right. And this is an average across all T20. So, if you're picking a batsman or a guy who, because of his batting ability at number 7, to face 9 or 10 balls, what's the point? Just pick your best bowling unit, and you just hope that some of those guys can bat. Now, Adam Milne's no slouch with the bat. Ish Sodhi has played some fine innings at different stages. Tim Southey can hit the ball out of the park. So they go down to Trent Boult, and that sort of stops before Trent Boult, but he's also capable on his day of hitting one out of the park. So there's no issue with that. If New Zealand get themselves in trouble, it's because England have bowled brilliantly and their batters haven't played well enough, and they kind of accept it.
I saw a smile on DK's face. Was it because he went as far down as Trent Boult with bat in hand?
Yeah, the moment you mentioned batters and Trent Boult in the same line, I was like, wow.
No, see, they bat down as far as Trent Boult. So which kind of meant it stops just before Trent Boult.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, we've definitely given Saudi. I have early memories of Saudi hitting 4 sixes in a Test match innings. Was that on debut?
Debut was 7 sixes against England at Napier. He was 18 years old, I think. So I'm going back to 2008. McLean Park, Napier. I think he got 74 or 76 and hit 7 sixes.
7, yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. I took 3 sixes away from him. So yeah, Saudi can definitely bat.
That's right. He can have those. He can have those in the semi-final. Just give them back. Give them back in the semi-final. It's fine.
I trust me. If you were expecting Tim Saudi to be hitting a few sixes in that semi-final, you'd be in trouble.
Yeah.
You'd be in trouble. But let's get the audience involved in. We've got so many questions that all of you want to ask of our panel, and let's get in one that we've selected for today in our hashtag Ask Cricbuzz live session. And this comes from Siddesh Singh, and he says, "What is Cricbuzz Live's panel's team of the tournament? Has any Indian cracked the list?" Well. I can tell you, possibly the answer might just be maybe 1, maybe 2. But what we've done is we've tried to pull our teams in there. And what order shall we go in? Dooley, shall we go with your team first?
If you want to, yeah, no problem at all. If you want to throw my team up there, and I'll run through it fairly quickly. It's quite self-explanatory, and it wasn't a tough selection policy for mine. I don't think it wasn't the selection meeting was very interesting. I argued with myself a couple of times, but I finally got there.
There you go. So whether you like it or not, here it is. This is Simon Doull's team of the tournament, and obviously a lot has to do with how you've performed in the tournament rather than pure reputation. So Dooley, go for it.
No reputation at all. This is purely on tournament only. Best skipper, I think, in the tournament, as far as the opening batting is concerned, Babar Azam. I've got him in there with Jos Buttler, who has just been outstanding for England. Asalanka, I thought, has been a revelation for Sri Lanka, so I've got him in there. Been really impressed with Aiden Markram. Gives a little option with the ball if you want, but he's just there because of his power and his brute strength. Shoaib Malik, how can you go past Shoaib Malik, Asif Ali? They've won games, they've finished games for Pakistan. And then I've got Ali squared at 6 and 7. I've gone with Moeen, who I think also can offer you something with the bat and brilliant with the ball. Then Wanindu Hasaranga, we've seen him, hat-trick in the tournament, superb. Hazelwood's been the pick of the Australian seamers, I think, in my opinion. Trent Boult's been New Zealand's best, and I just wanted some raw pace to ruffle feathers and knock helmets off. So I've gone for Harris Ralph.
Fair enough, fair enough. And in this case, 9, 10, 11 don't really bat, but when you've got that
Correct.
first 8 with Simon Doull's logic and
H2.
mathematics to support it, it doesn't matter. TK, your team's up next.
Yeah, so I think our top three are pretty similar: Babar Azam, Jos Butler, and Charit Asalanka. I would have ideally liked a Morgan because I feel he's been the best captain of the tournament, but obviously didn't find himself as a batter in this. So I went for Babar Azam, who's been leading Pakistan very well as well. Rassie van der Dussen, I think he is somebody who's absorbed the situation and understood what's happening in every game perfectly before launching, and hence I have him in the team. I think he's a very clever batter. 4, 5, 6, 7. I have three all-rounders, three very different type of all-rounders. One being a left-hander, two being left-handers, and one being a right-handed tonker. The beauty is all three of them have bowled brilliantly towards the tournament. I mean, in the tournament. And apart from that, I think they've also produced very critical, very important, very, very nice 30-run knocks, which are very valuable. So I have that. And this has been a tournament for me, which has been dominated by the bowlers. So I wanted to pick as many bowlers as I could. And in many ways, if you can see, I've picked 7 proper bowlers. So Babar Azam shouldn't have any problems rotating the spinners or the fast bowlers at any point of time. He's got enough and more. And when you come down, I have a very interesting name, the Adam Zampa, because I believe that if Australia is in the semi-final, a lot of credit must go to him, because in the middle, he is somebody who's able to control things and absorbing pressure, coming from Australia, not very spin-oriented wickets, but using the conditions and doing well. My 3 medium pacers, I think, are 3 world-class bowlers. Trent Boult, Jasprit Bumrah, my all-time favorite, and obviously Shaheen Shah Afridi, who's looked a class apart from the rest. So that makes up my 11. I think we'll make a pretty good match against Doull'S as well.
Yeah.
Certainly would. It certainly would. I love the idea of having 3 kinds of spinners, all of whom are all-rounders, bringing it. The only surprise for me was Adam Zampa being added to the mix with a 4th spin option. But I think DK was thinking Doull from a captain's point of view, and what a luxury it is to have all these bowlers to rotate.
Don't mind that team at all. I mean, it was hard to leave a Shaheen out of a team. I kind of had because I had a left arm already and Bolt. I sort of wanted another righty, but you just can't argue. You can't argue with any of that. It all makes sense.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Not as colourful in my 11. Just one little left field choice that you'll see in there as soon as it's put up, and that is my choice of captain. I have put in Kane Williamson. Enough he's done with the bat towards the latter end of the tournament. He's solid. You give a run chase, even if Kane Williamson's going at less than 100, he's just that calming influence. So the other extra that is not in anybody else's team is David Visa. Thought he's really been standing out with the associates. Just his presence, his inability to have a haircut, it adds to the entire sort of ambience on the field. And the other unique name I had in there was Anrik Nortje. I was also going for raw pace. It was a toss-up between him and Haris Rauf. I went for Anrik Nortje. So I guess Doull, the only Williamson being a left field choice, you'd be okay with that.
100%. And again, you find a captain. I mean, Kane's been very good without being brilliant in the tournament as far as his run scoring is concerned. He just gets the job done, as he did against Afghanistan. You know, a couple of little not outs to just get the team home. He's captained New Zealand very, very well. He always does. It was just like I was fighting over that 3 spot for him. I couldn't have him batting at 4, but mate, it's a good side. And I don't mind David Visa. Actually, he's been the standout for Namibia, so it gives you a good option as well.
Well, there you have it. That's to answer your question. A lot of you actually asked about that. It was not just that one. A lot of people asking that now that you've got to the stage of the tournament, before getting into the semis, can you give us a little team of the tournament so far? And traditionally, we tend to do it before the knockouts begin. But a quick word, I think once we know that India are going to be playing no further part in this tournament, I'd like to get both your thoughts on the outgoing coach. DK, we've talked a lot about Virat Kohli and his achievements on the field. He, of course, will very much be a part of that batting order. But for Ravi Shastri, sometimes we tend to overlook the achievements of the guys sitting on the bench there. And I think he deserves a bit of a pat on the back too.
100%. I think, when he did come on to take the job, it was at a pretty tumultuous time. We weren't playing as well as we should. We had in 2012-13, that's when he came in. And then the way he's steadied the ship, taken control of it, brought in the kind of systems that he's done, handpicked his support staff, and they've done a very good job. We will always, keep speaking about the fact that they don't have an ICC trophy, but we should also remember they've won as many bilaterals, second to none in the world. He's taken the team to a World Test Championship final, a World Cup semi-final, a World T20 semi-final. So some fabulous work there by him as a coach, and I've thoroughly enjoyed in the limited time that I've spent with him. I think he's been very good, very positive overall. I would say I genuinely wish people remember this set of coaches for all the good things that they've achieved. Batting, bowling, and most importantly, the standard of fielding has gone up a couple of notches in the last 4-5 years. A lot of credit must go to R. Sridhar for that. I think he's been fabulous in that department. The bowling as well, going abroad, picking up 20 wickets consistently, and you're always judged on how well you play Test cricket. And Bharat Arun has done a fabulous job over a period of time. And credit to Ravi Shastri, when the chips were down, 36 all out, 74 all out, he found ways to pull that team up, get them going, and win series from situations which exactly weren't in India's favor. So I hope they're always remembered for the nice things that they've done over a period of time. Giving MS Dhoni a very, very nice send-off as well, making that journey for him very comfortable. There are so many things that I could speak about, and I think overall he's definitely taken Indian cricket to a very safe place. Now it's up to Rahul Dravid to take it to an even better place in the next couple of years.
Truly, it's easy to celebrate the highs, but you really need to look at the morale of a team when you're on a low. 36 all out couldn't have been easy, and even without being in there, I could just tell that someone like a Ravi Shastri would have an influence with the kind of words he'd come in there and say. I mean, you've seen him as a broadcaster and, of course, as a coach.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'll never hide my my love for Ravi Shastri, and as a mate, as a colleague in the early days, and just the admiration for taking on that role and doing what he's done with that Indian team, and along with Sridhar and Bharat Arun and all the all his support staff who he's sort of taken through on that very journey. We talked about it earlier this evening, and the legacy will be the bilateral tournaments overseas, the bilateral series overseas for me. You just, the depth that has been created, the depth that has been welcomed. We saw that on offer in spades in that Australian series, which was just phenomenal. Probably one of the great series that I've watched. I mean, you go back to the 2005 Ashes. That is the next best series I've watched, I think. That Indian-Australian series in Australia. So what Ravi has been able to do to transcend from really not doing a lot of coaching. You remember he came pretty much straight out of the commentary box. He wasn't really a career coach. Knows the game unbelievably well, has talked about the game with all of us on so many occasions, but walks out of a commentary box into a high-pressure situation with his combination with Virat, I think, has been exceptional. And just the way that, I mean, I know Ravi so well, and the way that he will take some of those young guys under his wing and just nurture them and look after them, but also be harsh enough with them when the time is required as well. The enormous respect that he has in Indian cricket and from those players, from young players to old players, I think is something that needs to be mentioned. And just the strength that he leaves this Indian side in now. Don't worry about this tournament. I mean, these things happen, and they can happen. And under enormous pressure, players, sides can crumble, and they can have bad performances. And one or two bad performances knock you out of a tournament. But don't let this be what you remember those guys for. He has left Indian cricket in an incredibly strong position with a great bunch of players, whether you've got the guys that were here or the ones on the periphery coming through, a test match team that is absolutely outstanding, and and plenty of talent to choose from. And wherever he goes from here, whether he comes back to join us in the commentary box or whether he takes that little crew of mates of his and goes off to coach a new franchise team, which I've read in the last couple of days might be happening. I just wish him all the best. He's a champion human being, and I look forward to a glass of red wine with him when I get to Mumbai for the Test series shortly.
Yeah, I think, and just to wrap up on this discussion, DK, I think we talked about at the start of the show the passing of the baton from Virat Kohli to Rohit Sharma when it comes to T20I cricket. For Ravi Shastri, passing the baton to Rahul Dravid, it'll be a fairly secure baton, and the only question will be the chemistry between captain and coach and how quickly it develops.
Yes, I think Rohit and Rahul Bhai are obviously they know each other well. I think they've been in constant touch during this whole progress, and they'll have a good marriage of sorts. Whereas it'll be very interesting to see the Virat Kohli Rahul Dravid dynamic, because very different personalities. I don't think they've worked much together. Maybe they've played a season of RCB together, but I don't know how much how much they've worked together over a period of time. So it'll be very interesting to see how that journey. Moves forward, so to say. The Test cricket has been in a very strong place over a period of time, so it'll be very interesting the choice of wickets they choose to play home series in, and these are the decisions and the kind of players that they're going to be backing over a period of time. Another World Test Championship around the corner in a couple of years, so that's another cycle that they'll be looking at. But for that to move forward in the right direction, what are the kind of wickets that they want to prepare and play on when a New Zealand comes and when Australia comes? So it'll be some very interesting times for Indian cricket as well. It's gone into the good thing is it's gone to a person like Rahul Dravid, who's very safe, who's very secure, who's absolutely knows the game and a pure student of the game, and I'm sure he'll take it to greater heights.
Well, wonderful to get the thoughts of both Dinesh Karthik and Simon Doull as we bid farewell to India from this tournament. We bid farewell to Virat Kohli as captain of the T20I team, and of course to Shaz the coach, Ravi Shastri. Where he goes next, well, only time will tell in his typical fashion. What we have not resolved yet is the answer to today's Joy Factor question, which seemed like a pretty straightforward one. And I reckon that whatever I had picked up with the smile that we got in reaction was correct on my part. What did Glenn McGrath do in a cricket match at Eden Park in 2005 that reminded people of 1981? Dooley, go on, give us the answer.
Well, I'm pretty sure that I was there, but he pretended to bowl one underarm. He pretended to bowl an underarm delivery. Was it a one-day game? I think it was a one-day game between New Zealand and Australia, and something was going on, and he just pretended to roll one along the ground, a la Trevor Chappell to Brian McKechnie when New Zealand needed 6 runs to win at the MCG in 1981.
Yep, that's what it was. Exactly that. Pretend to bowl an underarm ball. The only difference was that Trevor Chappell didn't pretend. He actually did.
Yeah.
Not everyone, even in his own camp, approved of it. Just to remind all of you who may have been too young for that, they needed 6 runs of that last delivery. And the only way to prevent anyone getting under the ball, if you didn't have the skills, was to roll it along the ground. A proper grubber all along the ground. And McKechnie just patted the ball down, chucked his bat away, and off he went. It was one of those incidents you want to forget. But
double international too. Brian McKechnie played rugby for the All Blacks.
Yep.
As well as cricket for New Zealand.
Just like Jeff Wilson.
Yeah, correct.
There you go. All-round sports persons, and like we have all-round quizzers. Who answered this question first for us? Let's get our name straight up there, and it is Rajat Bhargav. Well done. I haven't seen this name before. So if you're getting newer and newer names in, or maybe we have, I'm just being told we have Rajat Bhargav. So if you're coming in more than once, then be careful. You could be on that Hall of Fame list, which means answer 3 questions and you will get an honorable mention. But there it is once again to wrap up here in the last game of the Super 12 stage. It's been a pleasure interacting with all of you. It's been a pleasure having Dinesh Karthik and Simon Doull. We will see all of you at the business end of the tournament when the semi-final gets underway. Semi-final 1, England against New Zealand. Semi-final 2, Australia taking on Pakistan. Until then, from all of us on Cricbuzz Live, it's good night.